Welcome into After Carmen. I'm Dan Hope, joined by Garrick Hodge here from Autzen Stadium, where Ohio State suffered its first loss of the season, falling 32-31 to Oregon in a game that we both expected to be close. I mean, I had said it all week. I thought it was going to be a close game, quite possibly even a one-point game, and that's exactly what it was. And Ohio State, they needed to either make a big stop at the end of a game or put together a big drive at the end of a game to go win it. And they came up short in that regard. They were able to stop Oregon from scoring a touchdown on its final drive, which put Ohio State in position to then potentially drive for a game-winning field goal. But Jeremiah Smith getting hit with an offensive pass interference penalty that backed the Buckeyes up to the 43-yard line. The game ultimately ending with Will Howard running out the clock with only 6 seconds left on the final play. Will Howard did not get a throw off, decided to run the ball, slid, clock ran out. Ohio State didn't have time to use its last timeout, and the Buckeyes are going home to Columbus with their first loss of the season, which certainly I know from many listeners out there, probably feeling very disappointed right now about the way this one plays out. It is a new reality for Ohio State and for all of college football now, where one loss does not end your season, where Ohio State might very well play this same Oregon team in the Big Ten championship game in a couple months' time. But certainly after tonight, many things the Buckeyes are going to need to work on if they're going to make that happen.
Yeah, if this was still a 4-team playoff, it could have been a death sentence, but instead it could be just a blip on the radar, assuming the Buckeyes hold serve and win their remaining games and ultimately get the rematch with Oregon. Dan, you were up here in the press box. I was out on this field for the majority of the game, and I'll tell you guys, I know Oregon got a lot of flack for only having 60,000 fans. Only. It is funny, but it was loud down there. It got up to 120 decibels that I saw, and my ears rattled a couple times. It rang, not giving Ohio State any excuses, but this was a chaotic environment, and it's kind of fun to have Oregon in the Big Ten, but like you said, Dan, a lot to clean up on Ohio State's end. Defense in particular is my biggest takeaway from this. A little disappointing on that end. Denzel Burke, probably one of his lesser games in his Buckeye career, a game that he'd like to forget, and a game you certainly don't expect from a player of his caliber.
Yeah, I mean, you think about what this Ohio State defense was hyped up to be going into the season. I think we were certainly both of the opinion this is going to be the best defense in the country. Well, now the Buckeyes are going to have to get a lot better and prove that if they are to actually live up to that hype, because they gave up 496 yards of offense to Oregon tonight. And, as I was sitting there in the press box, the thing that really struck me was, for all the hype we gave to this defense going into the year, as Oregon was driving down the field, I did not have confidence that defense was going to get the stop that it needed. It did prevent the touchdown, so it gets a little bit of credit there, but for the game as a whole, it just allowed Oregon to move the ball very well throughout the game, especially through the air. And I had said it this week, I thought the pass defense in those first 5 games had looked suspect. It hadn't played a team that could really test it. It finally did tonight. And it certainly got exposed in that regard. And so this Ohio State defense, has to go back to the drawing board. I mean, there is a reputation now for Jim Knowles now across his 3 years at Ohio State that this defense hasn't shown up in big games. And this game is only going to further that reputation. And so as you start looking ahead to the second half of this season, whether it's Penn State, whether it's Michigan, whether it's a potential Big Ten championship game, whether it's potential college football playoff games, you can't allow that to happen if you're going to beat some of the best teams in the country. And Oregon clearly is one of those teams. Oregon, they're going to be ranked number 2 at least in the polls tomorrow, and they're a really good team, and most likely Ohio State's going to have to go through them again if they're going to get back and win the Big Ten championship. But that's still a ways down the road. For right now, Ohio State has got to work on cleaning up those issues in the more immediate term, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That said, I think you talk about this loss tonight. Yeah, the loss stings. You want to win this game, but as we think about the long-term implications of this game, I think the biggest loss of the night is Josh Simmons going down with what Ryan Day said is likely a season-ending injury. And I mean, I think we both said it before the year. Josh Simmons might be the most indispensable player on this Ohio State team, because Ohio State did not get the transfer portal offensive tackle it was looking for this offseason. Its recruiting at that position has not been great over the last few years, leaving them with questionable depth. And now your best tackle, someone who had been playing great in the first half of the season and had really boosted his NFL draft stock and made a case for being one of the top tackles in the country, you have now lost him. Zen Michalski went in there. I feel like I got to go back and rewatch the game before I can really evaluate how Zen Michalski played. I certainly don't think that's the reason why Ohio State lost this game tonight. But when you think about this team's national championship potential, not having Josh Simmons is really going to hurt.
Yeah, like you said, Dan, Josh Simmons' loss for potentially the season is the bigger loss tonight, especially because you don't know what you have at that position going forward. Zen, I know, had a false start late in the fourth quarter that they eventually picked up the first down anyway, but you could tell, and they had a couple pre-snap penalties throughout those last two drives in the fourth quarter that will need to be cleaned up going forward. But there's a lot to evaluate. Defensively, I think another thing that we were both pretty disappointed with was the pass rush or lack thereof. Dylan Gabriel kept clean throughout the entire time. Coming into this game, I thought that the interior offensive line of Oregon was gettable, and they held up very well tonight. They held up well, especially in pass protection, and that's one of the more bigger disappointing things on defense. And I guess we haven't even addressed, if you want to call it the elephant in the room, the offensive pass interference call that really killed the game-winning drive there at the end. I'll be honest, I didn't have the best look of it from my view on the field, as I had 30 photographers huddled around me, all like elbowing, like who's going to get this money shot. Dan, you saw the play. What was your take on it?
Yeah, to me it was borderline. I mean, it did look to me like the Oregon defensive back made the contact first. Now, Jeremiah did push him back, and it's one of those things. It's a judgment call in the heat of a moment of the game. I don't like that the game was somewhat decided on that call, because it is a very close call. And that really did, those 15 yards made the difference between Ohio State being able to kick a field goal on the final play of a game or not. Now, you could question, should Ryan Day have sent Jaden Fielding out there for that final play? Obviously, the plan for Ohio State there was to try to get some extra yards, leave 1 or 2 seconds left on the clock, call its final timeout, then send Jaden Fielding out to kick a field goal. It obviously did not work out. Will believed that he still had enough time when he slid, and that was close too. You could look at it and say, did Ohio State have 1 second left? But quite frankly, it would have been very hard to resume that game if they determined there was 1 second left on the clock and Ohio State called a timeout, because despite the insistence from Oregon that the fans should wait 5 to 7 minutes to storm the field if Oregon won, I think they were on the field within 5 to 7 seconds. So,
Can confirm, it got run over almost 3 times.
That's a lot of words to say, same thing that what Ryan Day said in the post-game press conference. I mean, they said it before the season. Their preseason mantra was, quote, leave no doubt. You can't let it come down to that. When you give up a long drive on the defense, allow them to bleed out most of the clock, it's going to be hard to win in that situation. And it was a valiant effort, but at the end of the day, effort's great, but you're judged by your results. And Ohio State did not get the result that it needed in this game. And so, like we said, I mean, this season's not over. Nobody should be looking at it that way for Ohio State, but the margin for error is gone. Now the pressure is on now for Ohio State that, you have lost this game. You've lost that opportunity to get a big statement win. Now another loss, while not necessarily an eliminator, would then put you in real jeopardy. And so now, you've lost that margin for error. You've got to go into the second half of the season treating every game as a must-win game. And, we will see if the Buckeyes are able to fix the things that went wrong tonight and make that happen.
Yeah, it's going to be a while before we see the Buckeyes play again. Got an off week, got 2 weeks, and Dan, the schedule doesn't slow down anytime soon. You got a either 1 or 2 loss Nebraska team coming in, and then they go head up to Happy Valley to play Penn State, who, last I checked, is pretty good, although maybe not quite as good as this Oregon team. But, yeah, I mean, they're going to have to fix it. They're going to have to fix it quick, but their goals are still in front of them if they can turn it around in time.
Well, a lot of things for the Buckeyes to work on during the bye week, and certainly a lot for us to cover here coming out of this game on 11warriors.com. So stay tuned with us there for more coverage of the Buckeyes over the bye week and then leading into their second half of the season, which will begin 2 weeks after this game back at home against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So we hope you'll join us next time on After Carmen. Thanks for listening in.